You are listening to the Maple Footy Podcast. This is the unofficial football podcast of the North. I'm your host, Sam Little. Find me at official Sam Little on Instagram. There's nothing left to say except for sit back, enjoy, and welcome to the show.
Hello, yes, welcome back to another episode of the Maple Footy Podcast, and today is a bittersweet day because it is the last CPL coverage podcast that I'm doing for the season because the season concluded on the weekend between Forge and Cavalry as a winner was crowned of the North Star Cup. And yeah, what a good season, huh? Season 6, moving on to season 7 next year, and it's just great to see this league slowly but surely gaining support and gaining attention, and I think it's great. I think it can only do positive things for the game in this country, and long may it continue. But before I kind of get into the breakdown between Cavalry and Forge, I just wanted to shout out the awards that were given on the Thursday before the final, as the CPL obviously held their award, I don't want to say show, ceremony, and yeah, some big winners, and I just want to congratulate each winner. So Emil Gazdov of Pacific FC won the Golden Glove. Great season from him. He was also up for young player U21, and obviously goes to show how good of a season he had. I know Pacific, it didn't have a long run in the playoffs, but that still doesn't dampen a great season that Gazdov had personally, or the club in general. Honestly, just because you get knocked out early doesn't mean that you didn't have a great season. And Emil Gazdov definitely had a great season. So congratulations on the Golden Glove winner. The U21 winner, and I'm extremely happy about this, Kwesi Poku wins it for the former Forge man. I was about to say for Forge. He's technically a former Forge man. He had a great season, and I mean, I think the proof is in the pudding. You know, he goes off to Belgium, is killing it in Belgium right now, and has now since been capped by the Canadian men's international team. So obviously, it just shows that he's quality, he's class. I think that, no disrespect to the other nominees, of course, absolutely not, but I think it just shows that he definitely deserved this award. But congratulations to Kwesi Poku, as he is the U21 Player of the Year in the CPL. The Golden Boot winner, obviously, we already knew who it was, because if you can read the stats, you know who it's going to be. But it was Tobias Warchewski, and this won't be the last time I say his name in this podcast. But yeah, 12 goals in the regular season, another 2, I believe, in the playoffs, so 14 altogether. A great season from him, especially having gone a year without playing football, to now being the star man for Cavalry as he wins the Golden Boot. So big congratulations to him. Defender of the Year, we're sticking with Cavalry, as it's Dan Klomp of Cavalry. Defender of the Year, I mean, I don't really think this was surprising. A lot of rumors now coming out that this could be his final season with Cavalry that he just played. I tried to dig around and see where he was linked to. I couldn't find anything, but on the broadcast and during the final, they had said that Klomp could be leaving Cavalry. So I guess we'll have to keep an eye on that. Like I said, I couldn't find any teams he was linked with. Doesn't mean, obviously, it's not me saying, oh, that's not true. These guys obviously know what they're talking about. I just couldn't find anything. But big congratulations to Dan Klomp. Player of the Year was Brian Wright, which I'm not sure I was expecting it, but it's a welcome surprise, because led the league with 15 goal contributions, and of the 168 ballots cast, his name was on 92 of them. He won the Players Player award by 110 points. That's absolutely absurd. Talk about being well respected by your colleagues and peers, because my goodness, that's absurd. Congratulations to Brian Wright, who is the York United FC man, was their top goal scorer during the season. And yeah, that's absolutely absurd. 10 points. That's crazy, but definitely good for him. And a big congratulations to him. And my minute of fame here, I actually did meet him. So, small victories for me. Moving into Coach of the Year, Bobby Simeonis finally wins Coach of the Year. It's definitely a long time coming. You could probably make the case they probably could have won it a majority of the previous seasons. So it's a big congratulations to Bobby Simuris of Forge. Definitely 100% deserved it and has deserved it multiple times before this. And I mean, if he didn't get it this year, I think there may have been riots on the Maple Footy podcast, but fret not, we do not have to worry about that. And lastly, but certainly not least, Player of the Year. I'm extremely happy about this one. Tristan Borges of Forge FC becomes the first ever two-time winner of the MVP award. 100% deserved. I thought he was the best player in the league. From start to finish, he was unreal. I thought was genuinely having conversation amongst people that follow the CPL that, you know, a Canadian men's national team call-up wouldn't feel unwarranted or unearned. Obviously, that hasn't come yet. He was called up back in 2020, but it didn't come this year. I wouldn't bat an eye if I did see his name in the rosters. I really wouldn't. But yeah, he definitely deserves this. I thought he had a great season, and he's just an overall great player and seems like a class act. Watching his award, receiving the award, you could tell how much it means to him and how proud he is of what he does, and just how proud he is to be one of the founding faces of the CPL. It feels like I feel like he's one of the faces of the league, I would say, and he definitely deserves this award, especially coming off of such a up and down season last year. I know this season culminated for him last year in one of the most iconic ways that possibly could, with an Olympico in the final, but that doesn't tell the whole story. He was out injured a lot last year, really battled injury, and for him to come back, be in probably the form of his life, and yeah, just really did really well, and I think he's 100% deserved that. So definitely a big congratulations to all the winners of those awards. I know you're definitely listening. But anyways, there was a game that took place over the weekend that you have definitely come to hear about, so let's talk about it. Forge and Cavalry, a rematch of last year's CPL final, of which we saw Forge win that one 2-1, and then the actually rematch of the 2019 final as well, the first ever final between Cavalry and Forge, where Forge won that on aggregate 2-0, because remember, the first final was played over 2 legs. It's no longer played over 2 legs. It's played over 1 leg now, and it wasn't my favorite game to watch. I will say that. I thought one team looked up for it and the other team looked tired. And I really think that is the story of the end of this season. Forge looked tired towards the end of this season and looked like they were out of answers towards the end of this season, whereas Cavalry really picked up really good form towards the end of this season and looked hungrier than ever. And I think it was going to take something special to beat them, especially at home, having that home curse broken last year by Forge, coincidentally. Having that home curse broken, as no team had ever won at home, there was no longer that monkey on the back of the host, whoever it would be, because now it's been done. So I think it was going to take something extremely special to beat Cavalry in that setting. There was a club record of, I think they said 7,000 there. It could have been more. But I think it was going to take something really special, and Forge just didn't look like they had it on the day, and truth be told, they haven't looked like they had it for the last month. And this isn't me making excuses, it's just the fact of the matter is, they played well. Their season started back in March, I believe. It's now November. A lot of travel in those boys, and a lot of games played. So it was always going to be, I don't want to say a challenge, because it should never be a challenge to get up for a final, but it was always going to be maybe a little bit harder than they would have liked it to be, given how many games they had played. But obviously, success comes at a cost, and the cost is, in this case, you're playing for a good amount of time with a good amount of travel. But credit to Cavalry, I thought they came out and they bossed the game from minute 1 to minute 90. It never looked like they were gonna lose this game, in my opinion. I really thought that they had a game plan and they stuck to it. They got their goals, of which I do have some things to say about the goals, but they got their goals, and once they went 2-0 up, you kind of just knew Forge wasn't coming back from that. They did tease it a little bit at the start of the second half when they scored, but outside of that, it just didn't look like it was going to happen. Cavalry looked too hungry for Forge, but let's kind of talk about Forge a little bit more. So I want to give a shout out to Yassim Kalelet, who I think pretty common belief is that he kind of blundered in that game against Cavalry, which saw Cavalry beat Forge 1-0 just a couple of weeks ago. But since then, I think he's been a pretty good brick wall for Forge. Without him, I don't think they're in the final. He made some big stops against Atletico Ottawa, and then made some big stops on the day against Cavalry in the final. So I wouldn't say that this loss is goalkeeper error led to this. No. I thought he was very good on the day and has been very good throughout the season. He did have a lot of competition from Kalungo, who I also think is a class goalkeeper. Forge are blessed with, I think, two very good goalkeepers. But yeah, I don't have much to say about Kalelet. I think he did his job. There wasn't a whole ton I think he could have done about definitely the penalty. I'm not sure any keeper saves that. The second goal, if you want to be nitpicky, he may have been able to react a little bit quicker, maybe make his body a bit bigger, but that's really if you're being nitpicky. I think he was kind of let down by his defense on that second goal. But speaking of the defense, let's get into the defense. Malcolm Duncan, I thought, had a very good game. Speaking of that second goal, my issue with the second goal is that it looked like there was a foul in the build-up and it should have been called, and I believe it was on Malcolm Duncan. But obviously it's not. And this isn't me saying that Cavalry did not deserve to win it, because I sat there and I thought, those goals were, maybe they could have been called back, blah, 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 blah. But I was still sitting there going, they still deserved to win that game. Like, that game was theirs to win. But anyway, sorry, just a little side tangent. I thought Malcolm Duncan had a very good game. I thought he was probably the best of the Forge defenders. I say, kind of looking at Antonio Janssen as well, who I thought was very good on the day. But yeah, I thought Malcolm Duncan was very good. I think he had his hands full a lot with guys like Moosey and Jay Herdman. I think him and Jay Herdman have had some great battles in the last couple of weeks between the semifinal, the first semifinal, and the final. But yeah, I think Malcolm Duncan kind of really kept Jay Herdman pretty quiet on the day. I thought it was a good performance from Forge's number 2, the right back. It's a shame that it doesn't end it in silverware for him, but I thought it was a very good performance from him. Moving into the two center backs, we'll start with Antonio Janssen. I mean, what more can be said about Forge's Iron Man? He is just very good. He just is. I thought when Warchevsky of Cavalry was central, I think Antonio Janssen really, nullified him, if I'm being honest. Warchevsky found most of his joy when he kind of pushed out wide and was kind of able to dictate flow from the wide areas. I think Antonio Janssen and him had a very good, respectable battle throughout the 90 when they were kind of face-to-face in the center. And Antonio Janssen is, of course, the guy that scores the goal that gives Forge fans hope. It's definitely a goal. I think maybe the keeper of Cavalry, Carducci, could have done a little bit better, if I'm being honest. I don't think it probably should have been a goal. I think it was definitely savable. But Antonio Janssen, if anybody, I think, deserved a goal in a big moment for Forge, I think it was him. He was their Iron Man throughout the season. As famously, he was my pick to win Defender of the Year. I thought he was class all year. Was the Iron Man as Forge won the Shield. But obviously it doesn't happen. Klump is still a very good choice to win it. But yeah, no, I thought Antonio Janssen was solid on the day, and I don't really have a whole ton to critique about his performance. Dominic Samuel was his partner on the day, as Matusla was, of course, still injured. And I think Dominic Samuel really stepped in pretty well, I would say. I don't think he put much of a foot wrong, and I know people will kind of look at that penalty. And that's another thing I had to talk about, was the penalty. Dominic Samuel concedes the penalty. I don't know. I honestly, at first glance, I thought it was Stonewall penalty, but through the replays, it looked like a 50-50 like battle between him and Warchevsky. Just Warchevsky went down and he was in the box, and he's probably always going to get that call. Even if there was VAR, I doubt it gets overturned. I think it's one of those ones, but I don't know. Maybe I'm being nice on the Forge defender. I'm not sure, but I didn't think it was a penalty. I don't know if that's a hot take. But yeah, I thought it was just a 50-50 like battle for the ball and everything, and they were both kind of grabbing each other, and then Warcheski just kind of falls and he gets the penalty, which of course is always like those penalties are given. I'm not saying that's a first time ever, but I just wanted to get that out of the way as I kind of compliment Dominic Samuel, because I think when he's called up for Forge, he always does step up. He's not always going to be your starter, but when he does get the start, I feel as though he does step up really well, and I thought he stepped up well in this game. If you want to say apart from the penalty, then we can say apart from the penalty. But yeah, he was very quick to the ball. He won as much as he could. He tried to distribute from the back. I think it was kind of hard for him and the defense as a whole, just because it felt like a Cavalry just kind of were controlling the game and the attacking flow of it the entire time. So I think it was kind of a hard-fought battle for the Forge defenders. But yeah, I think Dominic Samuel, I think he was definitely very good when he had to step in, and just a shame that he's the guy that concedes the penalty. Moving over to Bellewu, I thought this was probably, sadly, his worst game of the playoffs. I don't think it was the best that we saw of him. I think he's been class throughout the playoffs. I just think on the day it wasn't his day. You know what I mean? Sadly, he does drop, I think, his worst performance in the playoffs. He couldn't hold the ball. I don't want to say he wasn't able to overlap, because he just, there was never really an opportunity for him to. So I can't really be like, oh, he didn't overlap, But he just looked uncomfortable almost. And I don't know. He just looked like he wasn't maybe well prepared. I think Moosey had his number all game long. And like I said, I've really praised Bellewu throughout the playoffs. And I would have 100% started him in this game as well. So it's not me going, ugh, he shouldn't have started. We should have brought in Para. No, I think he had earned his start. He stepped in greatly for Para and has had good performances throughout the season. I just think sometimes it's not your day, and he was definitely not the only guy that didn't have his best day out. Moving into the midfield, you have Becker, Hajabrapor, and Noah Jensen. Becker and Hajabrapor were both obviously nominated for Player and Players Player of the Year, and I just think that they found it very hard to really get a stranglehold on this game, which is something that you can't really say about this midfield a whole ton throughout the season. But on the day, Cavalry it was an onslaught. I thought Cavalry totally dictated this game, and I just think Forge's midfield just couldn't get a grasp on it, which is extremely uncharacteristic. I thought for all three of them, their distribution wasn't as top class as it usually is. They weren't able to get control of the ball. They weren't able to get control of the game. Hajabrapor and Becker especially looked very overrun, being kind of those two holding midfielders, which is a shame, because when that midfield is really in the groove, they are really in the groove, and such an enjoyable midfield to watch. But it just seemed like Cavalry did their homework, and they just did not let them. Hajabrapor, I'll start with him, but I will say probably for these three, my points will be pretty much the same for all of them. Hajabrapor just wasn't able to distribute, and when he had to defend, which was most of the game, he did do a solid enough job, I would say, defensively when he had to. I know it's kind of contradictory to say I think they were pretty solid defensively, but couldn't get the ball back. I just think when it came time to maybe get a toe on a ball or a head on a ball or clear the ball, I think they did well. It was just getting the ball and retaining the ball that not so well. Not the strong suit of the day for Forge as a whole. Kyle Becker, he's at his best when he's got the ball at his feet and is just controlling the game. I mean, it's what makes him, in the short history of the league, one of the best players to grace the league. But yeah, just on the day, once again, couldn't get his foot on the ball. When he did, he was suffocated in the midfield by Cavalry and really wasn't given a whole ton of time to look around, pick a pass, pick a play. And it, like I said, it just, I think, comes down to Cavalry wanting it more. They were more hungry. They were ready for this. They were ready to take that ball whenever they could, and they did. Noah Jensen, I thought, run his socks off, but much like his two midfield partners, it was just a very difficult afternoon. They just couldn't get the ball back, and they couldn't dictate the play. Noah Jensen has that one half chance, really. He just kind of strikes the ball from about 20, 25 yards out, and that's really his most notable attacking moment. But yeah, that kind of brings me to an end with the Forge midfield. I just thought suffocated, couldn't dictate the game, couldn't get the ball, and yeah, not what you would expect from them. Looking at the Forge wingers, you have Mpoma, who came off very early before the half-hour mark, so I don't really have much to say on him because, he didn't have a whole ton to do in that half hour. Just hope that the injury is nothing too serious and hope that he's okay. Where Chouanier, I've been very critical of Chouanier, I feel like, during these playoffs, as he hasn't really been able to get a stranglehold on the game, and I think it's been kind of a disappointing playoff for him. And I think it was a disappointing final for him as well. He didn't get involved. He was kind of second to any ball that he could be. His press wasn't all that much there. And yeah, he didn't get to show any real creative spark in an attacking sense because Forge didn't get to attack a whole ton. And I very much like Chouanier. But yeah, it just hasn't really been his run of games, I don't think. And, he is still a very talented player and has been a great player for Forge. But yeah, it just hasn't been his playoffs, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. Moving at Badi Bonga, he started out as the false nine and then moved more to that left wing spot. And kind of in both instances, didn't really get to have a whole say on the game, which is a shame because I think a player like Badi Bonga he lives for these moments, the big game, big moments. We saw him do it last year, and he just wasn't able to this year. And once again, kind of like Chouanier, I don't have a whole ton to say about him because he didn't get involved really at all in much meaningful actions. He squared up to a couple Cavalry players, which you always like to see that bite. But yeah, I don't have a whole ton to say. I just really think he was pretty much a non-factor throughout the game. I think Cavalry did enough to nullify the wing positions, and they didn't really get any joy at all because they never saw the ball. And that's a testament to how good Cavalry, I think, was on the day. The subs Forge made, of course, Tristan Borges came on for Mpoma, as they had mentioned in commentary that Borges wasn't starting the game because he'd been carrying a knock for the last little bit. And much like Chouanier and Badi Bonga, I don't have much to say on him. They played Borges in the false nine position when he came on. That position does not suit him, and especially in the way that Forge plays now, it just doesn't suit him. He's more apt to be like a number 10, but it just didn't suit him. And I think that kind of comes down to Forge not really having a tried and true striker at the moment. I know Terrian Campbell is a great striker in the CPL and obviously the league's top goal scorer in the CPL, but coming off of a big injury-filled season, sadly, only playing 3.5 games, obviously he's probably never going to start this game, and they really lack that presence up top of a striker. I'm not sure it would have mattered on the day, but yeah, so you bring on Tristan Borges to be that false nine, kind of not bring on Jordan Hamilton, whereas I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe Jordan Hamilton could have made something happen. Maybe he couldn't have. I don't know. I just find it very strange that you don't trust your only real healthy striker because, like I said, Campbell injured for most of the season. And then they brought on Campbell with the last 10 minutes to go. No Jordan Hamilton in this game, which I find surprising, as maybe Bobby just doesn't trust him. Maybe Bobby just sees it differently. I don't know. But to me, it is kind of a pretty loud statement to bring on Tristan Borges as your false nine, where, like I said, position that doesn't suit him, and then bringing on a Terrian Campbell who has only played 3.5 games this entire season. I don't know. Maybe Hamilton himself is carrying a knock, but to not bring on a striker when you're in need of a goal, a healthy striker, I should say, when you're in need of a goal, is a strange one. But regardless, every coach sees it differently. And Terry Campbell and both Tristan Borges, I think, both struggled to get into the game. As, like I said, Terry Campbell only got 10 minutes, in all fairness to him. And Tristan Borges, it doesn't suit him, but I'm not sure he would have been able to get much of a stranglehold on the game had he played more as like a number 10, because I think Cavalry just were dominating the game as it was. And in the 69th minute, Para came on for Noah Jensen. I don't know how long Para's loan deal is. I don't know. I think it's only the 1 year. So this could have been his last game for Forge. I think he was a very good loan signing. And if it is his last game, then I do think he had a good season. Much like the other subs, I think that he really struggled to get into the game. He was playing more as a left winger when he came on, which was an interesting choice, given that they had, like I said, Terry Campbell, Jordan Hamilton. You could have brought them on and pushed Borges more to the wing. But, like I said, everyone sees differently. And I think that's kind of what happened. I really do think that Forge was just outdone on the day, really, both in the dugout and on the pitch. I think Forge was outdone, out-tacticked, outplayed, and I think in a final, that's what happens, right? You watch the game tape, you watch your team, you watch who can mark who's in good form, all that stuff, And at the end of the day, I think Forge they never looked to be that team that was going to win it. And I think it's a shame for them to end such a great season, kind of as second place, really, because I know they did win the league, but they finished second place in the playoffs. And I think it'll lead Forge into an interesting offseason. I'll be very interested to see who stays, who goes. Like I said, Para, I believe, was a 1 year loan, so it'll be interesting. Is Jordan Hamilton on the way out? Is that why Simeonis didn't play him? Terry Campbell will be coming back from an injury. Tristan Borges, last time he won the MVP, he tried his luck elsewhere. Is that the case? And in all fairness, I do think most Forge players could go and prosper elsewhere. I think a lot of them could do a job in MLS, and not to say, CPL, gotta leave that, No, I mean, if they're liking the CPL, if they're liking the league, no harm, no foul, right? Like, CPL is Canada's league, but I'm just saying MLS is technically this step up from the CPL, so I think a lot of them could do a job there if they want to try their hands in, say, Europe or anywhere. I wish them all the best of luck. It'll be very interesting to see for just off-season. I think you could see a lot of movement. But we'll have to wait and see, But on to our winners of the entire thing, Cavalry. Third time proved to be lucky, as they did finally break that streak of not winning in the final. They did, in fact, win this one, third appearance, and they finally get the job done. And it has been a long time coming. Them and Forge have met up a good few times in the finals. Half the finals that have been contested for the CPL have been Forge and Cavalry, so it's hard to say that Cavalry haven't been great throughout the 6 years of this league, and I think it was a long time coming. Definitely, I think, deserved over the course of the 6 years, and, they've been undone in their two previous finals, and I don't think that was ever on the cards for them in their minds, because they, as I've alluded to and have said already, they looked up for this. They looked hungry. They did not want to lose that, especially in front of a hometown crowd, especially after how they lost last year. It is well-deserved. So big congratulations to Cavalry, and let's kind of get into it. So Carducci, the captain, the goalkeeper, he didn't have much to do on the day. Forge did not have much attack. He made about one save, I think, off the top of my head, the Noah Jensen shot, which he should make in all fairness, but still have to make it, right? And then the goal, I think he definitely should save. I don't know, maybe I'm being harsh. I just thought he probably should have done a lot better on that goal. I think it was very savable. But outside of that, I mean, he lifted the trophy because he's the captain. He wasn't tested on the day, really, at all, apart from those two chances. So I don't have a whole ton to say on the goalkeeping position for Cavalry. Yeah, I think the most work he put in was having to lift the trophy at the end of it. If I'm being honest, he wasn't tested all that much, but as a goalkeeper, I would assume you probably like those days, especially in a final. Moving into their defense, starting with right back Aird, I thought he was very good, a little bit unchallenged, but dealing with Badibanga, who we do know is a big moments player. Although I do think Badibanga did have a quiet afternoon, I think Aird definitely played a part in that, as I think he really kind of put his foot down defensively, and really nothing was getting past him or the rest of the Cavalry defense, in all fairness. Badibanga couldn't find much joy against Aird, and Aird seemed to be winning almost every battle he had on the day, I would say. So it was a very strong performance from him. He's been in the league, I believe, since the inception of the league. Has played for Valor and Edmonton. So it is very good to see him get this moment. It's a very nice story, and I think it's kind of one of the things that the CPL is all about, Moving into Dan Klump, as I kind of said at the start of the episode, could have potentially been his last game. I shrug. Maybe for Cavalry. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Defender of the Year for a reason. Very good defender. Solid on the day, if a little bit unchallenged and untested. Like I said, I think the defense didn't have their hands full, but when they did their job. I believe the two center backs didn't have a whole ton to do, regardless, never really having a striker to kind of mark out of the game. Just a pretty easy afternoon. I think he was on cruise control for most of it. And much like Carducci, I think you probably wouldn't be complaining as a defender / goalkeeper having a quiet afternoon, especially in a final. He looked calm on the ball. He helped build from the back a good few times. But when it came to being a defender, he didn't have a whole ton to do. And it makes it a little bit frustrating for me to kind of find points to talk about, because I don't have much to say on the matter. His center back partner, Callum Montgomery, essentially cut and paste what I had said. The former Minnesota United man, once again, not a whole ton to say. He looked composed on the ball, held the build from the back, and definitely a very easy, I would say, afternoon for him. Bradley Camden, had, you'll never believe this, a pretty quiet afternoon. He didn't have a whole ton to deal with on a defending aspect. I thought he got forward a good little bit and really was a great outlet, kind of forward on the field in Forge's half, but in his half he had a pretty quiet afternoon. But yeah, he offered a good few overlapping runs for Jay Herdman, which I think helped Cavalry overload their left side, Forge's right side, a good few times. And I think that's where Camden really shined, was getting to kind of show off some attacking prowess, if you will. And he didn't have much to do defensively. I'm very sorry to report. Moving into the midfield, Shumi. We'll start with number 26, former Forge player, actually. I don't believe ever made an appearance for Forge from 2022 to 23. Also a former Edmonton man and Montreal man. Played 52 times for Montreal, in case you were wondering. But yeah, I mean, was one of the midfielders I think contributed to Forge's midfield not getting a stranglehold that they would have wanted on the game. I thought Shumi was first to pretty much every ball he could have been. I think he really helped dictate the flow of Cavalry's game. Had a quietly good afternoon, if you will. One of those players that kind of just quietly went about his business, but you would have noticed if he wasn't there, if that makes sense. His distribution, I think, was on point, and like I said, broke up play first to every ball he could have been, and just a really impressive, I think, outing for him. Like I said, quiet if you weren't watching him, but if you did watch him, I think you would see how much he was doing, kind of that silent engine of the team on the day. His midfield partner, Gutierrez, the former Valor man. Sorry, I'm listing off all these formers. Former Valor man, now, of course, Cavalry man. First season with the club, and definitely has that fairy tale ending that he probably wanted when he signed his deal becoming a Cavs player. And much like Shumi, I think he had a quietly good afternoon. He helped dictate the flow of Cavalry's game, complemented Shumi very well. I think both of them kind of played off each other very well, always an outlet for the other. They understood what the other man kind of wanted and needed. I think they just really shined on the day together, really complimenting each other well, quietly going about their business, but don't mean that in any disrespectful way, because sometimes as a midfielder, especially in that position, you sometimes got to go about your business quietly, and you'd notice if they were having a bad game, but not necessarily if they're having a good game. Kind of like I'm thinking like Jorginho, if you will, back in like his Chelsea days. You noticed if he was having a bad game, but you didn't notice if he was having a good game, and those were his best games, is when he went about his business. Whereas those bad games, you go, oh, yeah, you notice him. Whereas for both of these boys, they both had very quietly good games. Moving up into that kind of attacking three just behind Warchevsky, we'll start with Ali Musi. I think he caused problems for Forge. Definitely not his best game, I would say, for Cavalry, but in the end, it didn't need to be. He still caused Forge a lot of problems. I think he kind of had Bellewu kind of in trouble a good few times, and maybe he doesn't get the goal that he did last year at Tim Hortons Field. What a goal that was, by the way. A goal that would have been fitting of winning a final. I will say that much. It was a great goal. So he doesn't have that impact on the day here, but in the end, he didn't need to. But he caused a lot of problems for that Forge backline, especially Bellewu. I think anytime Musi was on the ball, you felt as though something could happen. He got a couple half chances here and there, nothing too crazy. He definitely did enough to trouble Forge on the day, and I think that that's kind of what it comes down to. He did his job, you know what I mean? He may not have been the Ali Musi that we've seen this season, whereas he's kind of like, honestly, kind of like their Batty Bonga, of just a lot of flair, big moments, and potentially you could say it wasn't his biggest game for them, but definitely still had Forge in trouble a good few times, and definitely wasn't nowhere near like a disaster class or worst player on the pitch, nothing like that. Just definitely just one of his quieter afternoons, and in the end, he still caused problems and still gets the job done. Moving over to the left, Jay Herdman. A great battle between him and Malcolm Duncan, as I kind of said, and they did back at Tim Hortons Field a couple weeks ago, and they did again here. Jay Herdman, I thought, shined when Cam Dem was able to help him overlap. He linked up well, I think, with Camargo. But outside of that, I think him and Malcolm Duncan just really had a good, honest battle between the two of them, and he did cause problems a good few times. He's a tricky winger, and only spent about half the season with Cavalry, but man, what a half season to spend with them, huh? I think he's another lone boy. From the Vancouver Whitecaps. So I'll be interested to see if, once again, I don't know if it's just this season kind of loan. Maybe he's gonna be on loan next season with Cavalry. I'm not too sure, but Whitecaps boy. We'll see where his career kind of goes from here, because I don't think he's a long-term Cavalry player unless Cavalry end up signing him on a permanent. And then, of course, Sergio Camargo, who scored what would end up being the winner, and he took the goal very nicely. And just throughout the entire day, just caused Forge problems. He is a Cavalry original, so it's nice to see a guy like him stick it out with the club for so long, and then, of course, end up getting this crowning moment, a crowning achievement, a winner in the final, the first final that Cavalry wins. So he's been there for the heartbreak, and now he's there for the triumph. And once again, kind of what the sport's all about, isn't it? It's nice to see him get this moment. Of course, former TFC player, I believe, was on the team that won the MLS Cup. So definitely not the first trophy he's won. He has a good few medals, I would assume. But just a class performance from him. Was a very tricky number 10 that Forge kind of had to deal with. One of the reasons, again, why Forge's midfield wasn't able to get into the game. I think Camargo complimented guys like Warchevsky Musi, and then of course Schumi and Gutierrez in the midfield very well. Kind of much like Schumi and Gutierrez, he was an outlet for everyone. It just seemed like he was always available, made himself available, operated very well in tight spaces and tight pockets, and like I said, gets that goal very well taken. And it was really the dagger, I would say. I know that Forge did get a goal and teased a little bit of a comeback, but once that second goal went in, I don't think Cavalry were ever losing this game, and inevitably they don't. And I think that's much in part to Sergio Camargo, who gets that massive goal. And he did have a great post-match interview. If you saw it or if you didn't see it, essentially he was being interviewed and basically told the interviewer in the most respectful way possible that's the last place he wanted to be. He wanted to go celebrate with his team, and I think that just shows how much that winning that trophy meant to him. So congratulations to Sergio Camargo for getting that moment, and definitely for making me chuckle just a little bit, because it's one of those things that you do always watch where you do see like the interviewer interviewing a player who has just won in the biggest match of their career, and it's like, man, just let him go celebrate. So it's very funny to see Sergio Camargo basically go, I would rather be celebrating with my team right now. Can I go do that? And he obviously did, and I'm sure he celebrated long into the night. And of course, Golden Boot winner and MVP, first ever MVP in the final, as it was a new award that was announced this year. Tobias Warchevsky caused Forge many problems, gets the assist on the second goal, and of course wins and then converts the penalty, and it's a great penalty as well. His first season with the Cavs, as I mentioned earlier, he went a year not playing any professional football after Edmonton FC had folded, as he played his football there. And yeah, just, I mean, top class from him, really, wasn't it? Like I said, I think he had a good, honest battle with Antonio Janssen, but when he would move out wide, whether it be on his left or his right, he caused problems for Forge, and he's a very good striker, but he's also a very good all-around player. He's not afraid to carry the ball, take guys on, and he's just such a difficult player to dispossess, it seems like. He uses his body very well to evade being dispossessed, and I think that was no different here on the day. Just a very good performance from him. Hold up play is there. Goal scoring threat is obviously there, and yeah, just a very good performance from him. I would say well deserving of the MVP award in the final. I think you probably could have given that to a good few Cavalry boys and you wouldn't have heard any complaints, but I think Warchevsky's definitely a deserving winner of it. Golden Boot winner, added to the new North Star Cup that he now has in his locker after this year. As far as substitutions go, I think a good few of them, they didn't have a whole ton to do. They were brought on to see out the game, I would say, and they did that very well. Charlie Trafford, Lowell Wright, Kabza, and Shaw, they were all just kind of brought on, and they filled their role very well. Charlie Trafford was winning seemingly every foul he could, and I do know that, it is annoying seeing players win these fouls in these big moments because, like, let them play. But we've all been there, right, where maybe you were a Cavalry fan on the day, or you've watched your team in a Champions League final, or Canada in the Copa, whatever, wherever, and you have that player that give me the ball, and he goes down off of a light foul, and it frustrates the other team. It kills the time, and it kills any momentum that the other team could have been building. And I think that's what Charlie Trafford was brought on to do, and that's exactly what he did, and he did it perfectly. Anytime he had the chance, he won a foul and just took minutes, I'm sure, in total off the clock. And I mean, that's just, I would say, veteran instinct. I think he's been with Cavalry for a good few years now. He knows what it's like to kind of do this. He was with Wrexham before that, and a good few other teams that I'm not going to list his entire CV. But yeah, no, he just knows how to see it out, and I think he really helped Cavalry see it out. Probably, I would say, their most impactful substitute. So yeah, that kind of brings me to the end. I would say Cavalry were the deserved winners on the day. I think, like I said, it's a shame that Forge had such a great season, and aren't rewarded with the playoff win. So both Forge and Cavalry now will find themselves in the CONCACAF Champions League next year, along with Vancouver Whitecaps. The 3 Canadian spots have been filled. So, I mean, it'd be amazing to see either one of them have a deep run, but obviously the Mexican teams always decide to ball in CONCACAF Champions League and seemingly always win it. So it would be nice to see a Canadian team, regardless of Forge, Cavalry, or Vancouver, whichever one. The closest we've ever come is TFC back in 2018. And sadly, they just fell short. So it would be nice to see a Canadian team back there and get the job done. And that does bring to a close Canadian club football as a whole, as all of our Canadian teams are out of the MLS Cup playoffs, and the CPL is, of course, done. So I think it'll be a very interesting offseason, as the CPL is also it's the home for Canadian football and Canadian football players that maybe sometimes don't have a home or have found the home in the CPL, regardless of whichever team. Or it is also the development for the CPL, as I have alluded to, Kwesi Poku. Then you have guys like Joel Waterman. This is just off the top of my head. Joel Waterman, Dominic Zatar, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones. Lucas McNaughton. These are all, like I said, just off the top of my head. Give me a few minutes and whatnot, I could probably think of a few more. But it is a development league as well. So if maybe potentially some of these guys played their last games with their club, hopefully they're on to new challenges and hopefully they succeed. Like I said, it'll be a very interesting offseason for all 8 teams. They've alluded to expansion, and I believe they said 2026 they want to have 2 new teams. So hopefully that does happen. I think that hopefully only good things can come from expansion. They've also apparently raised the salary cap as well. So that is also very good. Shows that the league is doing at least pretty decently financially, and I think that is kind of the concern with the CPL, is hopefully that money keeps rolling in, baby. And it is just very nice to see Canadian football getting to succeed, and I will forever support this league as long as it is around, and hopefully that is for many, 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 many years to come, and hopefully there are many, many, many more finals that I get to cover, and many more Forge victories. Hamilton boy, I gotta support Hamilton boys. But yeah, hopefully it's another great offseason and then right into a great season of CPL football. I'm playing with the idea of covering CPL football more regularly. It's something I would very much like to do and enjoy doing, because it is Canada's league. I would like to cover ideally as much football as I can, but I would love to cover CPL pretty more often. That's not a proper phrase. More often. And I hope that you've enjoyed this CPL coverage. I had a lot of fun doing it, starting back with York Pacific, then of course York and Atletico Ottawa, and then Forge Cavalry, and then Forge Ottawa, and then of course Forge Cavalry again. It was a lot of fun. I do hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you did watch the playoffs as much as you could have. I hope that you enjoyed watching the playoffs, because I think they were pretty good playoffs, and hopefully next season doesn't disappoint either. And yeah, keep your eyes out for the off-season news, and I will cover it throughout the Premier League recaps. If there is any big off-season news, I'll cover it the best I can. And until next season, keep supporting Canadian football. Canada has upcoming games against Suriname, one this Friday, the 15th, and then the 19th, I believe. It's a 2-leg affair. One is in Toronto, so definitely go see that if you are able to. If not, we'll watch it on the TV. And like I said, just keep supporting Canadian football. I will support this league for as long as I possibly can, and I'll continue to support Canadian football as long as I possibly can. And please, I hope you continue to support the Maple Footy podcast. Follow me along anywhere and everywhere that you want. You know the drill by now. And yeah, Prem recap will be up after this one. And that's all I gotta say. Thank you for listening. I do appreciate it. And until next time, cheers, everyone.
And that was your Maple Footy podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Check my socials for any and all future updates at Official Sam Little on Instagram, where I am most active. And until next time, live, laugh little.